we're back with another 2019 college football team season preview and prediction video today. Taking a trip up north, the Northeast, near my boy Bad Dog. What's up, buddy? Thanks for the shirt. I really appreciate it. If you guys aren't subscribed to Bad Dog 7676, or if you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber here on YouTube. He does mainly NFL videos, so I get a lot of comments all the time in my comments section. Lou, do you ever do any NFL videos? Why don't you talk about the NFL? If you guys want some of the best NFL content on YouTube, check out Bad Dog 7676. He's a New York Giants fan. He's also an Oklahoma Sooners fan. So he does watch college football, and he does talk some about college football on his channel. But just being honest with you guys, he is mainly an NFL guy. But check him out, Bad Dog 7676. But up today, Bad Dog's neighbor, Penn State Nittany Lions. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and some of them are even watchable, and all of them are entertaining. Give this video a thumbs up if you're excited. We're what, 9 days away from the start of the college football season. Today's Thursday. You got week 0, Florida versus Miami, coming up on August 24th. 9 days from now. If you're excited, give this video a thumbs up. If you're a Penn State fan, give this video a thumbs up. A lot of requests for a Penn State preview, so we're going to knock that out right now. All right, here we go, Penn State. Just a reminder, I got 2 videos coming up today. So Penn State now, Nittany Lions, a form of a cat. Coming up later this afternoon, another form of a cat with a different team further down south. That'll be coming up this afternoon. But let's get started with the Penn State Nittany Lions. We're going to do this the way we always do, right? We'll briefly recap last year, talk about who they lost, who's coming back, that kind of thing, what they might look like in 2019. Then I'm going to put the schedule up on the screen, and I'm going to go through it game by game and try to pick a winner and a loser for all 12 of Penn State's regular season games. If I can find it. Here it is. Wrong page. Yeah. Nevertheless, though, what did they do last year? 9-3. So a pretty good year. I mean, they're in a really tough division there in the Big Ten East, right? Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan State good most years, although not last year due to some injuries. They'll rebound this year, though. But 9-3 in the regular season, 6-3 in the Big Ten. They finished the season 9-4 after losing to Kentucky in the Citrus Bowl, 27-24. So a close loss. A few other close losses for Penn State last year, too. They were really close to having a much better season. Look at the Kentucky game, the bowl game, they lost by 3. Of course, Ohio State, they lost by 1. Michigan State, they lost by 4. Michigan, they only lost by, well, they lost by 35. What happened there? Penn State forgot to show up that week, 42-7. That was really the game that sort of got the Michigan hype train rolling last year after an early loss to Notre Dame. Some people had sort of forgot about Michigan. This game sort of put them back on the map. And then, of course, they rolled through the rest of their season until, of course, the Ohio State game, which they've been unable to get over the hump there. I've done a Michigan preview and an Ohio State preview already, so if you want to see those, click back a few videos or go to the 2019 preview playlist that's on the channel, and you can see the list of all the teams that I've done so far. But those were your 3 losses, Ohio State, Michigan State, which were close losses, and then Michigan, you got blown out. 4th loss coming into the bowl game to Kentucky by 3. What were your biggest wins? You didn't really have any wins that were all that impressive. You beat Wisconsin, but they had a down year last year, right? What'd they go? 8-4. I think they finished with 8 wins. And you beat Iowa, who is a pretty good team, but from the other side of the division, widely considered the weaker of the 2 sides. You did beat them, though. Those were probably your 2 best wins. Finished at 9-4. All right, head coach James Franklin. I've been high on James Franklin, really since going back to his days at Vanderbilt. Now, there are a lot of Big Ten fans, or not Big Ten fans, no such thing as Big Ten fans, fans of teams that are within the Big Ten, that have spent a lot of time telling me I'm way too high on James Franklin. He's not really that good. He's peaked at Penn State. I think that's yet to be determined. I think he's done okay there, and some of these numbers, I think, bear that out. Has he made a playoff or won a national title? No, but he's got a Big Ten title, right? a couple of New Year's Six bowls. Well, let's just look at it. He's been there 5 years now, so this will be what, his 6th year. He's 45-21. Pretty good record, especially if you consider the turmoil that Penn State went through under at the end of Joe Pa's reign there with the Sandusky stuff and all that. He has sort of got Penn State back to national prominence in my mind anyway. 45-21. 31 wins for James Franklin at Penn State in the last 3 years. That's the most wins in a 3-year period for Penn State since 1994, 95, and 96. So over 20 years there. He's got more wins in 3 years. So I think he's done pretty well. 2 New Year's Six bowls, like I mentioned. Won the Big Ten in 2016, but lost the Rose Bowl. But then in 2017, he actually won the Fiesta Bowl. So I think he's done okay. I think he's done pretty good. He's had some great to elite players, right? Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley broke all kinds of Penn State passing records. Of course, he's gone now. But anyway, let's look at what they might look like this year, who they lost, who's coming back, that sort of thing. We'll start with McSorley. He's gone, all-time leading passer in Penn State history in terms of yards, touchdowns, touchdown runs, and wins. No doubt about it, McSorley is the best quarterback Penn State has ever had, at least from a stat and a wins perspective. Now, maybe you can find a quarterback they had back in the day who may have done a little bit better in the NFL than what McSorley will do, but from a purely college perspective, Trace McSorley is the best quarterback Penn State has ever had. The numbers don't lie. Most wins ever, most yards ever, most touchdowns ever, most touchdown runs ever. So he did it all while he was there. 2019, you lost a lot to the NFL off of your 2018 team. NFL, graduation, 11 players transferred off of Penn State's team from the end of 2018 till now. The majority of those were upperclassmen who were buried on the depth chart. So it may not affect Penn State in terms of the starting lineup they put on the field all that much, but if Penn State were to run into some injuries or something like that down the road, this could be something that affects them from a depth perspective. 11 transfers is a lot to lose in one offseason. Who's going to be the quarterback this year? Well, we thought it was going to be Tommy Stevens, right? He didn't do that well in the spring, I guess. He decided to transfer out, so he's gone. That leaves redshirt freshman Sean Clifford. This guy only has 7 pass attempts in his career. He does have 2 touchdown passes. I think he has the longest touchdown pass in Penn State history, too. It just sort of a fluke there. I think it was like a 95-yard pass or something. Anyway, here's a strange stat, too. We just talked about how great McSorley was at Penn State and all the numbers he put up and all the records he broke, right? What happened last year? 77th in passing yards last year. Only 218 per game. You would think a guy that just left that set all those records, broke all those Penn State records, you would think the passing game would have been ahead of that. Now, to be fair, Penn State has been sort of a run-first team over the last few years. Of course, Saquon Barkley, absolutely elite. And then last year, Miles Sanders, they really didn't skip much of a beat moving from Barkley to Sanders. I'm not trying to suggest that Miles Sanders was as good as Saquon Barkley, but you continued with the run-first mentality, and we mentioned McSorley having the most amount of TD runs by any quarterback in history, so he wasn't afraid to take off running either, but still sort of surprising to me that you were 77th in passing. I complain about Georgia's passing numbers, hell, for the last 2 or 3 years, and Georgia was 72nd in passing. So less passing yards even than Georgia. You also managed to lose to Georgia back in 2016, but no need to talk about that. Who's going to be the running back this year now that Miles Sanders is gone? He was second in the Big Ten in rushing last year, so big shoes to fill for the second year in a row, right? Last year was really his first year as the primary running back because Barkley was the man the couple of years before that. A handful of sophomores, Ricky Slade, Journey Brown, C.J. Holmes. My personal opinion, Ricky Slade is the best of that bunch. However, freshman Noah Cain, I've been high on Noah Cain really since he was in about 10th grade. I wanted him to be someone that Georgia went after in the 2019 class. Didn't work out that way, but nevertheless, you guys have him. I think he's a really good running back. We'll see how much playing time he gets this year as a true freshman, but I would be surprised if he doesn't get on the field. I don't see a red shirt headed his direction. I think he's too good to waste a year of eligibility that way. Ricky Slade had 45 attempts last year. That's the most on the team for anybody that's returning, so I expect him to get the majority of the workload, especially early in the season. But you do have those other 2 sophomores and a freshman I really like, Noah Cain. Wide receiver, you lose a couple of really good ones, but you get one back in KJ Hamler, 42 catches last year, 754 yards, right? 8 of 8 of Penn State's 12 wide receivers that they have on scholarship are freshmen or sophomores. If you watch the Uncle Lou show during the offseason, it's a live show we do on Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 10 p.m. We carry that on through the season too. But I'm able to talk about a lot of things on those shows that maybe I'm not able or don't have the time to devote an entire video to. But I've been talking all offseason about Penn State and how I think this is a transitional year for them. Not a rebuilding year because they've recruited really well, but I think it's a transitional year. McSorley's gone. He's started there forever, so you got to find the answer at quarterback. Second year in a row having to replace a really good running back. 8 of your 12 wide receivers are freshmen and sophomore. I think Penn State is set up really, really well for 2020 and 2021. Even after doing today's research, though, I still think this is probably going to be a transitional year for Penn State. I can't see Penn State making a run at the Big Ten title this year. I hate to spoil the schedule prediction that's coming up, but again, if you've been paying attention to the channel or the live shows that we've done over the last 6 months, then you already knew I felt that way. So you've got good wide receivers, but they're really young. And your tight, I really like your tight end. I think I featured him in my best players in the Big Ten video that I did a couple of months ago. This Pat Fryermuth, whatever his name is, really good tight end. So anyway, we'll see what the offense looks like in 2019. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, you led America in sacks last year with 3.6 per game. That makes me drool. That makes me jealous. I'm green with envy. Georgia couldn't buy a sack last year. We were terrible. One of the worst teams in the SEC at sacking the quarterback and tackles for loss, something you guys excelled at. You were 4th in America in tackles for loss. So an elite front 4 last year, front 7, really. What do you have coming back? Well, defensive end, again with the name. I don't make these names, okay? So it's just my job to try to pronounce them wrong. Yetur Gross Matos, 8 sacks, 20 tackles for loss. Ridiculous numbers. He's back. Defensive tackle Robert Windsor, 7.5 sacks. He's back. On top of that, you got some young guys that played a lot last year behind a couple of really good guys that are gone. So I think your defensive front is going to be at or at the top or near the top of the Big Ten and America for the 2nd season in a row. Linebackers, you got to replace some experienced linebackers. That's the bad news. The good news, Micah Parsons, whatever his name is, this guy's going to be an absolute monster. Georgia wanted this guy bad too. We really went after him hard, didn't get him. You guys landed him. Congrats on that. He only started 1 game last year, but he played a whole lot. In fact, right, he led your team in tackles. So for a guy that only started 1 game but led your team in tackles, future very, very bright at the linebacker position for Micah Parsons. You also have 2 experienced seniors in Brown and Johnson. I think you're going to have great play from your linebackers again this year. Maybe the best in the Big Ten in terms of overall group of linebackers. Defensive backs, you return 2 experienced veterans back there, a cornerback, Reed, and a safety, Taylor. After that, again with the recruiting and sort of the transition, you've got some young talent. It's not really proven. You're going to have to find a couple answers at that other cornerback position and safety position. But again, Penn State has a lot of talent. So let's put the schedule up on the screen and we'll see how many wins this young talent can get in sort of what I consider a transitional year. We'll see what they can do. All right, you start off with a couple of non-con games against lower classification schools, Idaho and Buffalo. Now, Buffalo's a pretty good school, especially for the classification that they're in, but they shouldn't be competing with Penn State at all. Idaho, come on, you're going to win both of those games. I think this is a great year for a team like Penn State to be starting out with a couple of, I don't want to call them cupcakes and disrespect Idaho or Buffalo or whatever, but I think this is a good year for Penn State to start off with a couple of lower classification schools because I do think there's some wrinkles and some kinks. A lot of new guys rotating in and out in the beginning of the year can be dangerous, especially if you're playing a good team. You're not. So I think this schedule sets up good for you. I think you start off 2-0 with 2 wins over those lower classification schools. All right, then you have a third non-conference game, Pittsburgh. You absolutely destroyed them last year. An in-state rivalry game here, right? Penn State versus Pittsburgh, 51-6. Pittsburgh ended up being one of the best teams in the ACC. So yet another example of just how pitiful, poor, and pathetic the ACC was last year. I mean, the ACC is just poverty-stricken at this point outside of Clemson, and you absolutely humiliated Pitt 51-6. I don't think you'll beat them that bad this year, but the game's at home. I do think you'll get the win. You're 3-0. That takes you into your first bye week. Get 2 bye weeks this year. It's just because of the calendar. It's not a change. Next week you go back, or next year you go back to the 1. But you get a bye week after Pittsburgh before you start your conference schedule on the road at Maryland. Speaking of the live show I do during the offseason, lots of people have been telling me to watch out for Maryland this year, that they're flying under the radar, that they're going to surprise some people. I've looked into it a little bit, and while I don't think Maryland has any chance to get to 10 wins or win the division or anything like that, I do think it's possible that Maryland could be one of those teams this year that beats one of the upper echelon teams that you don't expect them to beat. Who that may be, that's harder to figure out than the fact that you think they may beat one of them. Trying to determine which one it is, very hard to do. I don't think it'll be Penn State, even though you play them there. You're coming off of a bye week. You'll be rested and healthy and ready to go. I have you at 4-0. Now you have an interesting game here with Purdue. You got to find a way to contain this Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore can win a game all by himself, and he is one of the few players we've seen outside of the quarterback position that can do that in college football over the last several years. You think about quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, Deshaun Watson to some extent, even though Clemson was a loaded team. Quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks, certain quarterbacks have the ability to sort of take over a game and almost win them by themselves. And when you watch Purdue play, it seems like Rondale Moore has that same quality. I mean, he's still scoring touchdowns against Ohio State from last year, right? And that whooping they put on them. But outside of Rondale Moore, there's not a whole lot to get excited about at Purdue. I don't think you'll completely shut down Rondale Moore. He'll get some yards, a touchdown or two in this game probably. But I think you win, and you're 5-0 heading into another road game at Iowa. You won this one last year very close, 30-24 at home. This time you play them there. I think Iowa gets the win here. I think Iowa is, they're definitely one of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten West. Some people have them picked to win the West. It's really down to them, Nebraska and Wisconsin, depending on who you want to choose there. Got to go on the road and play them there. I think they win probably another close game. That's your first loss of the season. You're sitting at 5-1. Then you got to play Michigan. Now, this is going to be the surprise game. I do this on almost every single team that I preview. And that's because it happens almost every single year to every single team. Almost every year, every team loses to at least one team you don't expect them to lose to, and every team almost beats somebody you don't expect them to beat. Who saw Auburn losing to Tennessee last year? Nobody. Who saw Purdue losing to Ohio State? Nobody. The list goes on and on. I mean, those are 2 of the most prominent examples from last year, but you can find examples of this almost every single season from every single team. Michigan is a much better team than Penn State. Shea Patterson, they're set at the quarterback position. Now, you can argue whether you think Shea Patterson's an elite quarterback or not, but he's the best returning quarterback in the Big Ten. Haskins is gone. McSorley is gone. So as far as returning QBs go, he's probably the best in the Big Ten. Now, we'll see if he's the best at the end of the year. That's not what I'm suggesting, but he's the best heading into the season. Michigan is a loaded team on defense. 2 wide receivers, Donovan Peoples-Jones, is that his name? And Nico Collins. I think you beat Michigan. This is the game, and I've already done a Michigan preview, so some of you are not surprised here. But, this is the game that I think Michigan loses in 2019 that you don't see them losing. This is it for me. Now, obviously, Michigan will probably be a favorite in this game. Even though you get them at home, Michigan will probably be favored here. But I think you pull off the upset and get a win at home over the Wolverines. You got to turn right back around the next week and travel on the road to Michigan State. Michigan State, kind of like Wisconsin, the schedule does not tell their whole story, or their record does not tell their whole story from last year. Michigan State was a much better team than last year than what their record indicated. They were absolutely obliterated by injuries last year, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They had at one point during the season, well, they had 9 offensive players injured and missed time at some point during the season, including their quarterback, top running back, and top wide receiver. If they can avoid that, I think Michigan State's going to be a dangerous team this year. I don't think they can win the Big Ten, but I think they might have a say-so in who does or doesn't. I think you lose on the road. Sparty gets the win. You're sitting at, 6-2, heading into your second and final bye week of the year. Come out of that when you go on the road at Minnesota. Good place to have a bye week here because Minnesota is going to be a dangerous team this year under P.J. Fleck. Minnesota is one of those teams that's going to beat somebody you don't expect them to beat. Don't let it be you. I like that you have a bye week before this game. I gave you a tough win on the road there at Minnesota. Come back home and play Indiana. No one knows who they are. you'll win that game. Name 2 players on Indiana's team. Yeah, you can't do it. Then now you got to go on the road at Ohio State. Loss. I think they beat you. Everything is going to hinge around Justin Fields at quarterback for Ohio State. How good is he going to be year 1 in that system under first-year head coach Ryan Day? But here's the thing about Ohio State, and I talked about this a lot yesterday in the Ohio State video, so I'm just going to mention it briefly here. And if you want to hear more, click back and watch yesterday's Ohio State video. Ohio State has won national titles and Big Ten titles with wide receivers playing quarterback. Last year, they had an elite quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, no doubt about it. He had all kinds of records, 50 touchdowns, almost 5,000 yards passing he had, didn't he? Prior to that, though, Ohio State was still winning 10, 11, and 12 games a year with people at quarterback who are now playing wide receiver in the NFL, right? Cardell Jones, Terrell Pryor. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So Justin Fields does not need to come into this year and have a Heisman-type season for Ohio State to win 10 or 11 games, in my opinion, unless Ryan Day just isn't who we think he is. But again, I think Ohio State's going to be pretty good. You got to play them there. I give you another loss there. Final game of the year, Rutgers. Win. I mean, come on. They're just not very good. It's no fun to pick on Rutgers or anything, and that's not what I'm trying to do. Just one of the worst programs, not just in the Big Ten, but really in the Power 5 for the last several years. So that's it. You finish at 9-3 in the regular season, 6-3 in the Big Ten. I don't think that's going to be good enough to win that division. It's going to come down to the Michigan-Ohio State game, in my opinion, and I don't see either one of those teams, Michigan or Ohio State, having more than 2 losses. I predicted them both to go 11-1, but I think it's possible one or both go 10-2. If the wheels fall off at Ohio State, they could be worse than that, but I just don't expect it to happen. So I think you finish 9-3, 6-3 in the Big Ten, a game or 2 away from winning the division. But again, this is a year I would consider to be a transitional year, and you have to look at your team. When you're at the point recruiting-wise where a transitional year or a down year is 8 or 9 wins, you're doing pretty good, right? Look at some of the other teams that have down years and win 4, 5, and 6 games. I don't see that happening for Penn State. Again, I don't think this is a down year or a rebuilding year. I would refer to it more as a transitional year just because of who you lost and how young you are at several spots, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. So 9-3 for Penn State, 6-3 in the Big Ten. Another pretty good year, another typical James Franklin year. This isn't going to do anything to change the mind of people who think James Franklin is overrated. I can tell you that. They're going to say the same thing. See, I told you he hit his ceiling, 9-10 wins, win the Big Ten once every 4 or 5 years maybe. I still think James Franklin can get Penn State higher than that. We'll see. But anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, don't forget there's a second video coming up this afternoon. Be sure and check it out. It'll probably be, I don't know what time it'll be uploaded, but it'll be sometime after lunch today. So I appreciate you guys watching and have a great morning. Shout out to Bad Dog, though.